Okay, well, thank you for joining. As I said, I'd like to welcome you all to our final online application support and Q&A session for Urban Links Africa. I'm Tom Lever, the project manager for Urban Links Africa, and I'll be running through the agenda with you and presenting a high-level recap of the open call. We'll then be going into the top 5 frequently asked questions. We'll then be opening up the Q&A session to all attendees, and then we'll just run through next steps. So I'd like to welcome you all, and also just to remind you that this session is being recorded and live streamed. So firstly, I'd like to introduce our panel. So we've got Katinka Schaff, who's a senior user researcher for Catapult, James Richards, the Applied Data and Technology Program Coordinator, and Charlotte Hutton, the Global Business Growth Coordinator. So they'll be joining us on the FAQ section and on the Q&A to answer the questions you have about the open call and application process. Next slide, please. So to give you a quick recap on the open call and the project itself. So as you know, we are working in Kenya and South Africa to identify urban challenges in 3 cities in each country. So in South Africa, we've identified 1 challenge for the 3 cities we're working with. So for Cape Town, we are focusing on how to build resilience in informal settlements. For Johannesburg, we're looking for solutions around sustainable mobility. And for Durban, we're seeking solutions to the issues around solid waste management and pollution. Now, for each of these cities and challenges, we've done a lot of work engaging with key stakeholders and the wider ecosystem in the city to understand what are those challenges. We've done detailed reports about them, which can be found on our Urban Links Africa website. So please visit that if you haven't already, and there's lots of information and insight about those challenges. Next slide. For Kenya, we have a slightly different approach. So we're working with Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu. But instead of there being 1 challenge for each city, we have 4 challenges that apply across all the 3 cities. So for these challenges, we're looking for innovative solutions in stormwater drainage and urban flooding. So how can you better anticipate floods and warn populations areas at risk in a smart, agile way? Wastewater management, to understand where the sources of wastewater leakage lie and where they flow to. Solid waste management, to incentivize the segregation and recycling of different solid waste streams at a larger scale. Traffic management and active mobility, to capture the current flows of movement across the city to aid effective spatial and mobility planning. So again, we have the challenge report for Kenya, which is on the website, which gives a lot more information about these challenge areas and examples in each of the 3 cities. So who can apply to our open call? We want to build sustainable long-term solutions to the challenges we've just covered. So we're looking for partnerships between UK SMEs, so that's a UK registered small and medium-sized business, and either a South African or Kenyan organisation. So depending on the challenge you address, if you're addressing a challenge in Johannesburg, you would be looking for a South African-based partner, or you would be based in South Africa and be looking for a UK registered SME to help develop the solution. So the UK registered SME, as this is a UK funded project, we will be funding the UK SME. They will be the lead partner and they will receive the funding, and that funding will then go through to the Kenyan or South African partner. The African partner should be local to the challenge selected. So if you want to address a building resilience informal settlement in Cape Town, you'd partner with a South African organisation. Next slide, please. So what are we looking for? So we're welcoming 2 types of solutions during this open call. We call these Tier 1 and Tier 2. So Tier 1 are early stage companies or solutions. So these are an early stage concept or an idea that doesn't exist or is very new to the market. For that solution and for that tier, we're funding up to £25,000 UK pounds per partnership. For tier 2, this is a more developed, advanced solution. So it will have experience in commercializing the product or service, and it may have been validated, but the solution will need to be adapted to address the challenge and the African market itself. So for these tier 2 solutions, you will be eligible up to £40,000 funding. Next slide, please. So how do you apply? So there are 2 routes to apply. If you have a partner already, so you have seen one of the challenges, you have a solution, and you already have an organization that you can work with to address this, this challenge and are ready to apply, then go straight to F6S, which is our online application platform. There are links to this in the Urban Links Africa website. Through here, you will register and begin to answer the eligibility and application questions and submit that by 12 p.m. UK time this Friday, the 21st of August. If you're still looking for a partner, which is quite late in the day, but certainly possible, then you would need to join our B2 Match platform. Again, the links to this are on the ULA website. Through there, you can set up a profile to describe what you do as an organization and what your offer is. You can then browse the other profiles of over 100 other organizations from the UK, Kenya, and South Africa who are already registered. You can set up one-to-one meetings, and you can discuss how you could jointly create a solution to one of the challenges. You would then, once you've agreed your partnership, need to create your profile on F6S and together apply for the open call. So as I said earlier, the open call will close this Friday, the 21st of August at 12 p.m. UK time. So that's a brief overview of the open call, what we're looking for, who's eligible. As I said, there's a lot more information on the urbanlinksafrica.com website. Go to the open call section. We have our detailed brief, open call brief, all the challenge reports, and an FAQ section. I'll now bring in the team to address our top 5 frequently asked questions, which will hopefully give you some useful information. But then after this, we'll jump to the open Q&A session if these questions don't address the question you have. So the first question, how will my application be reviewed?
I'll take that one. Good morning, everybody. So this is an excellent question. The answer is it will be a 3-stage evaluation process. So the first stage is a simple eligibility check. So that is to ensure that the application delivers on the absolute minimum requirements of the open call itself. So for example, involves a UK registered SME as a key requirement. It has answered all the questions relevant to the application and has been submitted on time. So that's the first stage, eligibility check. The second stage is the written application review stage. So the application that a partnership has just made will then be reviewed by internal CPC experts alongside challenge ambassadors to score that application, which will then lead us into the third stage, successful application or partnerships that have gone through the application review stage. We'll then get to an interview panel stage. Each partnership will be invited to pre-record a short presentation in advance of that stage, so that then the partnerships can be interviewed by a panel of experts involving internal CPC people, but also involving external experts that we are inviting to that stage. And that will be 30 minutes or so of Q&A on top of the 10-minute pre-recorded presentation. Throughout the application, at all stages, the actual applications themselves will be reviewed against kind of 5 key areas on a scale of 0 to 5. That is innovation, impact, feasibility, ODA compliance, and business sustainability. And that acts across all 3 stages of the evaluation process. So just to summarize that again, it's eligibility check, then an application review stage, and then an interview panel. Hopefully that makes sense.
That's great. Thanks, James. So the second question, who will review my application? Charlotte?
Sure. So as James has already highlighted, there'll be 3 stages. We'll be bringing in different experts at each stage. So the eligibility check will be done by CPC representatives who've been working on the project. Then stage 2, the written application will be reviewed by several people. First being Connected Places Catapult's experts. We'll also have our challenge ambassadors review as well to give the local context. And we've also invited African tech hubs to review the applications as well. And also our funders Innovate UK will also have representatives reviewing these. So each application will be reviewed by several people. We'll then select the top scoring ones to then move on to the interview stage. And here we'll have, again, Connected Places Catapult experts being involved. We'll also have city representatives. And then we'll also have some large commercial representatives. So we have Arab, Mott MacDonald, Hatch, UN Habitat, PwC, AfriLabs, and also SoftBank involved. So actually at this stage is already a great opportunity to get your solution in front of some really big names in this area. So we're really excited, and they're really excited to be involved with this. And we'll be announcing the representatives later this week. So you'll be able to understand who will be interviewing you if you're successful. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. So the third question, is the match funding provided by the SME and African Partnership jointly? Katinka?
Hi everyone. So the match funding was discussed quite a bit last week already. If you attended the session last week, welcome back. As the Urban Links Africa project is UK funded, the funding will be allocated to the UK SME as a leading partner, and we advise a contract between the partnership to ensure a fair distribution of the funding to the African partner. So in regarding the 30%, the 30% match funding should be provided by the partnership, and you can decide how this is distributed, but it must be very clearly stated in your application, and it needs to be a fair distribution. So we are very much open if you would like that the African partner is also kind of adding to the 30%, but it depends how you distribute the work as well. I just sent a link to the chat for everyone to see. The answer also is in the FAQ, and it's outlined that how this 70-30 percentage is split, that we covered 70% of the funding of the project, and there are also examples what the 30% entails. So there is a very detailed list of examples. So this is from capital use, travel and subsistence, training costs, overheads. So we have a long list of examples how this 30% match funding can be made up. That's it. I think, hope it's helpful.
Great, thank you, Katinka. So the fourth question, can I submit documents that are not in English? James?
Yes, good question. So the answer is unfortunately not. We don't have the resource internally to be able to translate kind of any applications that aren't in written English. So unfortunately not. Please do submit your applications in English. Thank you.
Thanks. And the fifth and final question is, I do not have a partner. Can I still apply? Charlotte?
So as stated before, unfortunately not. Part of the eligibility of this is you have to be in a partnership formed of a UK registered SME and either a South African or Kenyan partner. So that's sort of our very first stage of reviewing. If you apply without a partner, I'm afraid you won't be eligible for this open call. If you're still looking for a partner, as Tom highlighted before, you still have 4 days, so anything's possible. So go on our B2 Match platform, and we have over 100 companies now profiled there, so you can have a look and see if you can find a partner to submit an application with by Friday. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. So that covers our frequently asked questions. As mentioned, we've had a lot of FAQs over the open call period, so please do check the website, as Katinka has posted a link to it in the chat box on Zoom. So have a look there. That lots of questions and comprehensive answers to that. But there's always more questions. So we're now going to open the floor to you, our attendees, to ask us questions. Please, at the bottom of the Zoom screen, there's a kind of Q&A button. So please put your questions in there, type them, and we'll address them now. Please try and avoid using the chat function. It's easier for us to manage and track if you use the Q&A box. So that's at the bottom of the Zoom application. So we've already got some questions coming in. The first is from Nganga Nixon. So what is the timeline we can use for drawing up the project plan? It's a good question. So we would suggest from October this year to March next year. So that's October 2020 to March 2021. That's when our project comes to a close, and that would be the timeline that we would recommend you drawing up for this funding. So the funding from the open call lasts from that period, so from October to March next year. However, as outlined in the open call brief, we do want the applications to have an element of sustainability and life beyond the project. So do obviously in your application include the opportunity for the project and for your solution and idea to potentially go beyond March 2021. And as part of our support package to the successful SMEs and partnerships, we'll be helping you in developing that sustainability element. But obviously, if you can build that into your application, that would be great in advance. Okay, so we're getting quite a few questions coming in now. So from an anonymous attendee, we have a potential subcontractor in the US. Can we build in their costs? We have yet to find a UK South African subcontractor for this work. Perhaps Charlotte, you could address that.
Sure. So the question was, Tom, can they include a US partner? Mm-hmm. I'm afraid, unfortunately, you can't at this stage. We are looking for UK partners and South African or Kenyan partners. So at this stage, I'm afraid US partners won't be eligible for funding.
Thanks, Charlotte. Another question from an anonymous attendee. Can you clarify whether we can claim for labour costs? James, could you answer that, please?
Sure, I'll give it a good go. So I think the answer there is that it's up to the partnership making the application to be clear on what costs are being covered by the funding that a successful application will receive. Tom, if you want to kind of add any more detail on that. So I think the answer is yes, and it's up to the partnership to decide exactly how they will use the funding to cover any costs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And obviously, labour costs will probably be one of the largest costs of the application. So yes, we have outlined in our open call brief document, which is on the ULA website, all the different eligibility for the costs that you can claim as part of the application. But obviously, yes, labour is one of them. A question from JP Barb at Rootaware. What are the expected interview dates? Charlotte, could you answer that, please?
Sure. So as mentioned, there's obviously several steps to the evaluation process. So we will be aiming to start interviewing the week beginning the 7th of September. However, this might be a bit flexible in terms of how many applications we get and therefore how long the reviewing process takes. But we are aiming for the week beginning 7th of September.
Great, thanks. So Theo has asked, can the match funding be split between partners? I can take this. So yes, as part of our equitable partnership approach, we do want the partners to share the funding. As we've said, the UK SME will receive the full funding, but then that funding will be subcontracted down to the African partners. We have an outline of an equitable partnership in the open call brief document. And within that, we see that there should be a fair spread of the funding between the UK and African partnership. We generally would like to see a 50-50 split of that funding. However, we understand that there are obviously individual cases of funding and difference in costs. So we don't necessarily expect it in every case to be 50-50. We're happy to look on a case-by-case basis within each application, but we've outlined what we expect of an equitable partnership. So if you can make a good business case as to why it may not be 50-50, then we're happy to review that and we'll address it. So Stella has asked, is there a maximum amount of applications that one company can submit? Katinka, could you answer that?
Hi, yes. So there's no maximum how many applications you can submit, but in case you are successful in more than one application, you have to make a decision which one you're going with. So we are not only able to fund one application per partnership, per SME. So you need to be, I mean, it would be great if you're successful in various applications, but it will be very hard, also difficult for your other partner to then maybe withdraw your application. So you need to, consider which one you would like to submit, but there's no limit.
Thanks, Katinka. So Filippo has asked, can you clarify what you mean by a technological solution? James, can you answer that?
Yeah, sure. That is a good question. So fundamentally, we want technology to play a part in whatever kind of product or service that is suggested by the partnership in its application. So we fundamentally want there to be technology contributing to that product or service. It's important to note that that is as a partnership. So the individual partners do not have to bring technology to the table, but as a partnership, there should be technology of some sort. So for example, a UK SME could have a technology product and an African partner might not bring explicit technology to the table, but in partnership, there is the technology side contributing to the product or service. In terms of kind of what we mean by technology, technology is a very broad word. We're more interested, I think, in digital solutions because of the kind of distance nature of this partnership. So if it's primarily and very much a hardware technology, then I think it's less immediately relevant to this kind of open call, which sees two organizations trying to partner from across the world in very much a virtual way. That's not to suggest that there can't be a hardware element to the solution. So for example, perhaps one of the partners is an IoT solution provider. It may well involve the use of sensors, which in themselves are a hardware component. But we don't think that it's as relevant for kind of pure hardware solutions than it is for more digital solutions and kind of software-driven solutions. Hopefully that's clear. So just to kind of wrap that up, there needs to be technology contributing to the product or service. That can be from one or both of the partners of a particular application. And then in terms of what we mean by technology, we don't want to be too prescriptive, but we think that digital solutions are possibly more appropriate than very much hardware-heavy solutions. Hopefully that helps.
Great, thanks, James. Okay, so we've got a question from Yuri. Can we partner with a university in Kenya or South Africa? I can answer this. You can partner with a university in either Kenya or South Africa. Unfortunately, we won't be funding their time on the project. So if they're able to cover their cost, then that's great, but they're not eligible for any of the funding, unfortunately. So question from JP Barb. How many SMEs can win the bid? I can take this. We have a total funding budget of £250,000. So we're looking for between 10 to 15 successful partnerships to be funded. Obviously, depending on how many tier 1 and tier 2 partnerships we decide to fund, there will be a variation, but we're looking for between 10 to 15 partnerships to be funded. Having a look at some of the other questions. So from anonymous attendee, should our submitted budget demonstrate both A, the costs that we intend to cover with the funding, and B, the costs that we intend to cover ourselves, match funding? Charlotte or Katinka, could you address that?
Yeah. I can go ahead. Charlotte, you can add to it if there's anything missing. Yes, as much detail as possible. So if you create your timeline and also the budget and outlines of the project, you should write down or demonstrate the costs that you intend to cover with the funding, as well as the 30% you match fund and how you match fund that. So as much detail as possible will help us to understand how your costs are kind of outlined, and also to see if this is kind of, for example, rightly split the match funding between the UK SME and the South African or Kenyan partner. Charlotte, is there anything you would like to add?
No, I think you pretty much covered it, Katinka. When the application process, you will see there's an option to upload some supporting material. And here you can upload your spreadsheet or your financial plan. And as Katinka says, it's really important that you do highlight, exactly how you're going to use the funding and where you're going to do the match funding. So that's where you state it.
Great. Thanks. And I think there's a good question that kind of follows on from that. So from JP Barb, how and when will the funding be received, as in full or tranche payments quarterly? Katinka or Charlotte, could you address that?
I probably can start, and Charlotte finalizes some parts. We going to have, maybe I just add something to the interim report. So the funding is split into 3 payments, and there needs to be an interim report to check kind of the status of the project, and then you have the next funding going through. Charlie, do you want to cover the percentage of it?
Sure, I think maybe
I'll just check it as well, because
if I can remember the exact amounts, but I believe you get the majority of it as soon as you sign the contracts with us. And then, as Katinka said, there's a sort of a review time when we then sort of assess you against your project plan to make sure that you're hitting key milestones and the match funding. We then release the next round. And then at the end, once we've sort of made sure that you've hit all your milestones, we'll then release, I think it's 20% at the end. but maybe Tom, if you can remember the actual percentages, because I'm afraid it's...
Yeah, I'm going to check it now, and then I can post it into the chat as well, because it's in our open call brief and it's all outlined there, but I will find it and post it in the chat.
Great, thanks, Katinka.
Thanks. So there's a question from Richard. How much should we factor for risk in the project, given the Cape Town government clearing many informal settlements over the past few weeks? This is our major concern with developing a tool that could be used for the negative means. So it's a good question, Richard. You should factor in risk. However, I think it's worth pointing out at this stage, we are only looking for the development of a solution. We're not planning for the deployment of the solution within this project life cycle. So I think, yes, factor in risk, but we're funding the development of the solution. So by the end of it, depending on which tier you've selected and feel you believe your solution sits in, we'll be looking for either a more developed solution or if you're in tier 2, the more kind of commercially ready solution, a kind of business plan and deployment plan for that, but we're not looking to deploy at this stage. So it's certainly something to consider, Richard, and worth thinking about, and obviously do build in that risk factor, but I think it may not necessarily be a deciding factor at this stage. Okay, we've got a question from an anonymous attendee. We are a UK SME. Is the match funding to come from our side or from the South African partner? That's a good question. We see the match funding to be shared between the partnership. So as we previously said, we've outlined what is eligible for the match funding. So I think it's best if, as a partnership, you agree how the funding will be split. So the funding you receive, and then how best to do the match funding and where that burden will lay between the partnership. So it doesn't all have to come from the UK SME or from the African partner. It can be shared amongst the partnership, and there are a number of different criteria that qualify for what that match funding actually is. So it can be resource, labour, it can be materials, it can be training, other things. So again, this is outlined in the open call brief and in our FAQs as well. Okay. I think there was a question from Michael saying, can an SME provide the match funding entirely in kind, or it has to balance with cash? I think we've addressed that. So a question from Yuri, follow-up question, university partner, if you are not funding their time, does that also mean their time, labour costs, can't be used for match funding calculation? If the university is willing to give their time to the project without receiving funding, then yes, it can be part of the match funding, because there'll be a partner, however, they're not receiving funding, but they are giving their time towards the project. So that would be counted as match funding. Okay, just having a look at some of the other questions. So from JP, Barb, is there an expectation that it will be remote-driven delivery, or can we still meet the partner and add other stakeholders locally? That's a really good question.
Should I go ahead on that?
Yeah,
one?
can you address that, please?
So we're hoping, of course, that that you're able to maybe meet some communities, that you are able to maybe arrange some user research or field work in the kind of local area you're working. But the majority will be working remotely, especially if you work with or collaborate with your partner in the UK. You have to work remotely, and through Zoom calls, we use Miro as a collaboration tool. Have also maybe WhatsApp channel set up to communicate more on a go. But yeah, if you're able to meet the community in a safe way with enough distance, that's, of course, we support that, but we can't expect it from everyone. Hope that's a helpful answer.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, as Katinka said as well, if you do have the partners within your country, then yes, you're welcome to meet them. But yeah, there won't be any international travel at this stage. Wahome has asked, how have you structurally safeguarded within your organisation and external partners against the inevitable cultural and therefore creative bias that's all too common in top-down evaluations of viability, sustainability, other merits of the projects? It's a really good question and something we have considered from the start about how we structure this open call and engage with the cities. So we're conscious of, in the past, there have been open calls saying, we know the answer to your city's problems, you know, we've got the funds, we're just going to fund what we think is right. We've started from here at the beginning of this project of asking the cities themselves, both the city representatives, local authorities, but also the wider ecosystem of, tell us what your problems are, tell us what your challenges are in your city, because you understand the problems far better than we do. We did workshops, user engagement, research, desk research to really understand what those challenges are, what's happened, and speak to all the different factors in the city. We then landed on the urban challenges we have. And we're now putting those challenges out to the market to say, okay, this is the research we've done. These are what the cities have told us what their problems are. Now, how will the market address these challenges? And in terms of how we're evaluating them, again, we're conscious that we, as an organisation, are based in the UK. So we have assembled a panel of evaluation experts, specifically the challenge ambassadors, who are local experts within each city who understand the city and the challenge areas themselves. So these are people who have been working on solid waste management, mobility, flooding, all the challenges listed. They've got a background in working with them, dealing with the solution. So they're going to be on the panel, reviewing the applications. We've also got a representative from each city authority from Kenya and South Africa. So they'll also be taking that city authority perspective. And we've got, as mentioned earlier, experts from UN Habitat, AfriLabs, from large business such as Arup. So we've got that broad representation of UK, African partners to, we hope, give a fair and balanced assessment of the applications. And we've also got the three-stage process. So the eligibility will then do the review of all those eligible applications, and then we'll then do the interviews as well. So we hope that that would give a transparent and fair way for the applications to be reviewed and selected. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
That's great.
A few more questions. I think with one from an anonymous attendee. To clarify on a previous point, time given by the UK SME University UK-based initiative can count towards the match funding amount. Charlotte or Katinka?
You go ahead, Charlotte.
So yes, I think if you're giving up your time, if you're contributing time towards this project, that definitely can be part of the match funding, and needs to be very clearly stated in your financial plan, so we can see exactly where, when this time is going to be spent, and also which partner is contributing to it. Not sure, Katinka, you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, 100%. I think in the FAQ you have a list of, as Tom and I mentioned before, you have a list of how you can make up this match funding, and there are many, many options. You just need to be very clear in how you spend the 70% of funding we provide, and then the 30% of match funding. And of course, any work you bring into the to the project from resourcing and time will count for that.
Okay. So I think we've, so there's a question that's just come in from Wahome. So any considerations for IP protections for innovations, especially given the involvement of large corporate partners in the evaluation? That's a good question. James, could you maybe answer that?
Yeah, sure. Tom, if you want to add anything on top of my answer. The approach, the first thing to say is that CPC as an organization is not interested in IP through this project, and that's not what we're here for. So just to kind of lay that out clearly. Secondly, in terms of IP, I think any IP brought to the table is shared as it was by any partners in any given partnership. And then within the project itself, within the timeline of the project itself, any new IP created will be owned by whoever created it within that partnership. And on top of that, we have, for example, a legal expert internally who we will consult in any given kind of scenarios where we think that there are any IP kind of issues at all, then we can address that kind of on a case-by-case basis. But certainly our approach is, number one, that CPC isn't interested, frankly, so you don't need to worry about us. You don't need to worry more generally. And it's the onus, I think, is on the partners to agree the kind of limitations between IP prior to the partnership, and then on IP created during it, that they discuss that between the partnership and agree an approach. Tom, do you want to add anything on top of that?
No, I think that's pretty much covers it. So yeah, as James said, obviously you will bring your own IP, and that's to the partnership. That's your IP. You own that. Anything created within the partnership, we'd look for it to be shared between the partners, but this is something that can be negotiated between the partnerships and when we're entering into the contracting phase. So yeah, I think just in relation to your point around the involvement of large corporates, that's purely on a kind of an evaluation basis. They're not involved in the funding of this. This is coming from GCRF fund, which is the Global Challenge and Research Fund from Innovate UK and UKRI. So this is all around improving the lives of citizens in their cities. So it's not about giving IP from this project to large business. The IP will be owned by the partnerships, but this can be negotiated if you're successful and selected in the contracting phase. So there's a question from an anonymous attendee. What is the rationale for not funding a university partner? I can Katinka, or yeah, you know, Katinka.
Sorry. So the reason we're not funding a university is the project is supporting UK SMEs, and the partnership between the UK SME and the South African or Kenyan organization. So the reason we are not supporting universities is because the goal of the project is to fund SMEs and organizations. Tom, if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think that's quite clear. So yeah, really we're looking to fund kind of businesses, not necessarily academic organizations, but obviously we welcome their participation in partnerships in the applications, but obviously they'd have to fund their time and resource on that partnership. Okay. A question from Nganga. Outside the requested material, can we attach any supporting material, e.g. cases where the solution has been applied? Charlotte, could you answer that?
Sure. So there isn't the option at the application stage to do this. You have the option to upload your project plan and also your financial plan, but at this stage, there's no other option to upload this. This is, if you're successful, this is something that you can bring to the interview and include in your pre-recorded 10-minute pitch. If that's clear.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, I think that answers all the questions. Oh, we just had one come in. So where can we demonstrate the TRL of the solution to prove eligibility for Tier 2 partnership? Charlotte or Katinka, are you able to answer that?
I think that there's but Charlotte, you can confirm that there's an option of answering a question on the F6S application platform, that you explain which partnership, which tier you are, and which kind of TRL level you would put your partnership in, and justify it based on the two different partnerships and your experience and the level of your product or service.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's you select your tier that you think your solution will sit in, and then there's also, as you go through the application stage, there's various points that ask you to sort of describe your company, also your solution, and so it's at these stages that you should sort of be justifying. So, for example, if think you're in tier 2, then you should be, justifying, okay, well, it's been commercialized here, or etc., to really justify why you sit in that tier. So I don't think there's a specific question to say, please justify this, but that should be included when you describe your solution and your proposal.
Great. So the questions just come in. I think we'll have to make this one of the last questions. So if you've got one you want to ask, it's last calls for questions. Will there be live application tracking beyond the submission date for applicants? No, we won't. So once you submit your application up to 12 p.m. UK time this Friday, we will then begin the eligibility and reviewing process, but we will send out and communicate whether you've been successful or not, but there won't be a live process. But as mentioned earlier, we're looking to start the interviews in early September. So that gives you an idea of the timeline. So from the 21st of August, the deadline to submit your application closes, and then we'll begin the eligibility and review of the applications. So we'll let you know kind of end of August, beginning of September, whether you've been successful or not.
Tom, can I just add something? You mentioned last week in the workshop as well, that if you feel very much worried about how you put the 70 and the 30% match funding in, so 70% funding, and justifying how you spend money over this 4 to 5 months period, don't worry about it too much. If you feel, try to make it as clear and thorough as possible, but we would not make our decision up based on how you create your funding outline. And we will, if there's something not clear, or if we think you should adjust something, but your application is very strong, we will get in touch with you as well. So don't stress yourself out about the outline of any match funding.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions. So we'll begin to wrap up. If you can move on to the next slide, please. So the next steps are, if you haven't yet got a partner, you think you'll be able to find one and agree what your application will be, then great. Sign up to B2 Match. The link is on the urbanlinksafrica.com website. Create a profile, start searching, and start messaging people to see how you could create a joint partnership and agree how you'll submit the application. Or if you've got your partnership already in place, then that's great. And if you haven't already done so, then please log on to F6S. Again, the link is on the Urban Links Africa website. On F6S, you then create your profile and begin the application process. You can, once you've created your account on F6S, you don't have to submit the application in one go. You can save it and come back to it later. So please, if you're holding off, then don't get it started, get it set up now, and you can just start adding in answers and saving it and come back to it over this week, and then submit it by, the deadline is 12 p.m. UK time this Friday. Okay, I think if you've got any more questions that we haven't answered here, then go to the Links Africa website. There's the project brief document that gives all the information we've covered in today's session and more. We've also got our FAQ section that has a number of questions from previous sessions. And if you still have a question that can't be addressed, then drop us an email on ula@cp.catapult.org.uk, and we will do our best to get back to you within 2 days. Obviously, bear in mind we might have a number of questions in the run up to the open call, so please bear with us if we're not back to you within 2 days, but we'll do our utmost to respond as quickly as possible. And keep in touch on social media, follow our Connect to Places Catapult Twitter, and join our Equitable Partnership group on LinkedIn to discuss your application and let us know how you're getting on. So I think that's everything from us today. Thanks very much for joining. Good luck. I hope your applications go well, and I hope this session was useful. And I'd like to thank the panelists as well for their answers.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.